You know how every family has their roles? The golden child, the rebel, the quiet one, the fixer. Well, I was the fixer. Always have been. My name is Samantha Myers. I'm 29 years old. Work as a marketing consultant. Live alone in a 2-bedroom apartment outside of Portland, and for most of my life, I've been the one holding things together without asking for much in return. No drama, no spotlight, just doing what needs to be done. That's who I am, or at least, who I used to be. My sister Madison, on the other hand, she was always the spark. The chaos wrapped in charm. She's 5 years younger, a self-proclaimed visual storyteller, which, in practice, meant she painted dreamy half-finished canvases in my parents' garage and posted them online hoping someone would discover her. She was the one who cried the loudest, laughed the brightest, and somehow always ended up at the center of every conversation, even when she had nothing to say. But I didn't mind, or at least, I told myself I didn't. I still remember the day I decided to leave the money. It was a Tuesday. I'd just gotten off a Zoom call with a nightmare client and was scrolling through my bank app, mindlessly budgeting for the month. That's when I saw the balance, unexpectedly high, thanks to a client paying early. And in that quiet moment, a thought crossed my mind: what if I did something good? Something selfless, just because I could? My parents had been struggling lately. Medical bills, car trouble, rising rent. They never said it out loud, but I could feel the weight in their voices during our phone calls. So, I withdrew $10 in cash from my savings, placed it in a plain envelope, and drove to their house under the cover of night. No return address, no note, just slipped it into their mailbox and drove away. It was never supposed to be about recognition. That's not why I did it. But a part of me, maybe a small selfish part, hoped they'd at least wonder if maybe, just maybe, I had something to do with it. The next day, Madison called. She sounded breathless, excited, like she'd just won the lottery. "Sam," she said, "you'll never believe this. Someone left $10,000 in Mom and Dad's mailbox. No note, just cash. Isn't that crazy?" I smiled quietly on the other end. "Yeah," I said, "crazy. That should have been the end of it." But it wasn't. Because 2 days later, my mom posted on Facebook a glowing post about how her sweet Madison had left a surprise gift to help them out. About how proud she was. How thoughtful her daughter had always been. I read the post 3 times before it registered. Madison had taken credit, and not just that, she was basking in it. The comments rolled in like thunder. "You raised such a kind soul. Wow, Madison is incredible. She's always been so generous." I waited, thinking maybe she'd message me. Maybe confess it was just a mix-up. But all I got was radio silence. The next Sunday dinner was unbearable. My dad raised his glass to Madison halfway through the meal. "To the most generous daughter we could ask for," he said, eyes misty. Madison smiled and dipped her head modestly. "It's nothing," she whispered. "Nothing." I felt the blood rush to my face. But I stayed quiet. I told myself it didn't matter. That I'd done the right thing. That being good meant being quiet sometimes. But as the weeks passed, that silence started to rot inside me. Every family gathering, every phone call, every praise my parents gave her for her sacrifice felt like another needle jabbed under my skin. And Madison? She never corrected them, never once hinted that she wasn't the one who left that envelope. She just sat there, playing the role of the beloved daughter, while I watched from the sidelines, silent, invisible, erased. One afternoon, I finally broke. I was folding laundry, trying to shake off another voicemail from Mom where she gushed, again, about how proud she was of Madison. How not everyone would have done something so generous. And I just snapped. I dropped a pile of towels and screamed into the empty room. Not out of jealousy, but out of disbelief, out of the aching realization that no matter what I gave, no matter how quietly or selflessly, it would never be seen if it didn't come with a spotlight and a smile. Later that night, I pulled up the Facebook post again. That's when I noticed something I hadn't before. In one of the photos Mom posted, Madison was holding the envelope. The same plain envelope I had used. She'd scribbled a heart on the front, like it had been hers all along. And that was the twist that cracked something in me. It wasn't a misunderstanding. She had planned it. She'd seen the envelope, taken the money, and made it hers, with a little drawing, a little lie, and a lot of nerve. And my parents, they believed every word. From that moment on, I knew this wasn't going to be something I could ignore anymore. Something inside me shifted. I wasn't just angry. I was done. It started with the lasagna. I was cutting a square from the pan my mom had pulled out of the oven, extra cheese. Just the way I liked it, when my dad raised his glass again. To Madison, he said, almost out of habit now. The daughter with a heart of gold. The words were warm. They should have been harmless. But in that moment, they were a slap to the face. I paused, knife in midair, hearing the clink of glasses as Madison beamed and tilted her wine toward the center of the table like some award-winning actress. My fingers tightened around the spatula. I didn't realize I was holding my breath until I exhaled too hard and the slice of lasagna nearly fell apart on the plate. That's when I heard her. You know, Madison said with a soft, practiced smile. It wasn't even about the money. I just wanted to remind Mom and Dad that we'll always have their backs. No matter what. No, you didn't. The blood drained from my face. And something in me snapped so quietly it was almost elegant. I set the plate down. Slowly, carefully, and looked up across the table. My mom was smiling. My dad looked touched. My grandmother had tears in her eyes. And Madison? She was looking right at me. There was a flicker, just a flash, of something smug behind her calm expression. Like she knew, like she was waiting for me to break. So I did. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw anything. I just looked around the table and said, as evenly as I could, actually, that money wasn't from Madison. Silence. Not the kind that follows a pause in conversation. The kind that freezes a room. I felt it the moment every head turned. My mom's smile faded. My dad's brow furrowed. Madison tilted her head ever so slightly, as if she didn't hear me correctly. I continued. It was from me. I put $10,000 in your mailbox a few months ago. No note, no signature, just wanted to help. And I told one person, just one. Madison's eyes widened. Her mouth opened just enough to look stunned but not enough to actually speak. Sam, my mom said slowly, her voice sharp like a snapped wire. Why would you say something like that? Because it's the truth. That's ridiculous. She looked almost offended. We know it was Madison. She told us. She's always thinking of us. I turned to my dad, hoping for a different reaction. But he just shook his head and gave me a tired, disappointed look. This isn't a competition, Samantha. You don't have to try to one-up your sister. My stomach dropped. And right then, Madison found her voice. I can't believe you'd do this, she said, her voice trembling, perfectly wounded. I mean, I know things between us haven't been great lately. But this? Really? She looked to my parents for support. And they gave it instantly, my mom patting her hand. My dad sighing with fatherly patience. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I stared at her, hard. You're lying, I said, low and steady, and you know it. I don't even have $10,000. She shot back. You really think that sounds like something you'd do, Sam? Just give away money like that? No one even knew about it. There's no proof. Exactly, because I didn't think I'd need proof. You're just jealous, Madison said, her voice soft, almost pitying. It's okay. I get it. It's hard being in someone else's shadow. And that's when I realized the full scope of it. She wasn't just lying. She was rewriting the story. My mom crossed her arms. Samantha, this is getting petty. We're trying to have a nice dinner. I don't know what's gotten into you. My dad added, we love you, honey, even if you didn't do this. You don't need to compete for our attention. Compete? I stood up, not even realizing I had until the chair scraped back loudly against the hardwood floor. The room jumped slightly at the sound. You really think I made this up to compete? You think I sat on this lie for months just so I could have this moment? My voice was shaking now. Not from rage, but from the weight of all of it, every dismissal, every ignored text, every smile they gave her that used to be mine. I was the one who left that money. I didn't say anything because I didn't need to be thanked. But watching her sit here and pretend she did something selfless when she didn't? That's not just hurtful. It's disgusting. Madison blinked, big and innocent. You don't have any proof, she whispered. And that was the truth. I didn't. No receipt, no bank statement, no camera footage. I'd made sure it was untraceable. That was the whole point. And now it was being used against me. For a moment, nobody said anything. My dad sipped his wine like this was just a minor family squabble. My mom's eyes were narrowed, judging, and Madison looked like she was winning. That smug calm had returned. So I did the only thing I could. I looked right at her and said, "One day, you're going to need someone to trust. And I hope you remember this moment, because you burned the only bridge that ever held you up." Then I turned, grabbed my coat, and walked out the door. No one followed me, not that night, not the next. In fact, for the next few weeks, I heard nothing, not a single text, not a single call. My parents, the people who once called me every other day to check in, had gone quiet, and that silence was louder than anything they could have said. You'd think walking away would feel powerful. But it didn't. It felt like walking out into a snowstorm without a coat, numb, raw, exposed. For the next week, I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I didn't even talk about it to anyone. I just floated, like everything inside me had been hollowed out. I went to work, answered emails, hit deadlines, smiled in meetings, but when I came home, the quiet swallowed me whole. My phone stayed painfully silent. No calls from Mom, no guilt-ridden texts from Dad, and certainly nothing from Madison. The longer the silence stretched, the more I realized this wasn't just awkward distance, it was intentional. They had made their choice. They chose her, and I was now the jealous liar. Even the rest of the family started pulling away. At first, I thought I was imagining it. My aunt didn't respond to my birthday message. My cousin stopped tagging me in the usual inside joke memes. I figured maybe life just got busy. But that theory shattered during a visit to my grandparents a few weeks later. The moment I stepped into the living room, the air was different, stiff, polite, cold. My grandmother offered me cookies like a peace offering, her hands shaking slightly as she placed the plate on the table. My grandfather barely looked up from the newspaper. And then I heard it, my Aunt Linda's voice drifting from the kitchen. Hushed but sharp. "It's just sad, really. You'd think Samantha could have been happy for her sister instead of trying to make it about herself." My breath caught in my throat. My chest burned, but I forced my face to stay neutral as I sipped my tea. Pretended I didn't hear. Pretended I wasn't dying inside. And in that moment, something in me turned. Not anger. Not even vengeance. It was clarity. They didn't just believe her, they wanted to. Because Madison was the story they preferred. The daughter with flair, emotion, drama. I was too plain, too quiet, and when I finally screamed, they called it noise. So fine. Let them have their fantasy. Because if no one was going to give me justice, I was going to take it for myself. It didn't happen overnight. There wasn't some grand plan sketched out in a notebook. It started small, quiet. I stopped answering calls from numbers I recognized. I unfollowed relatives on social media, one by one, until my feed looked like a blank canvas. I needed space, not just from them, but from the version of myself that still hoped they'd come around. The only person I didn't push away was Katie, my best friend since college. The kind of person who could sense my mood before I opened my mouth. One night, over cheap wine and microwave popcorn, I finally broke the silence. "I don't know what hurts more," I said, staring into the bottom of my glass. "That Madison did this to me, or that my parents believed her so easily." Katie didn't interrupt. She just listened, which somehow made it worse. "I spent my whole life doing everything right," I continued. "I stayed out of trouble. I helped them. I never asked for anything. And none of it mattered. One lie, her lie, was all it took." Katie reached over and grabbed my hand. "You don't deserve this," she said quietly. "And honestly, I don't think it's about the money anymore. It's about the fact that you were erased. That they let her erase you." She was right. And that was the twist I hadn't even seen coming. This wasn't about 10 grand anymore. It was about truth. About identity. About the fact that I gave. And she took. And somehow I was the one everyone wanted to forget. After that night, I started thinking differently. Not in terms of revenge. Not exactly. But in terms of correction. If I couldn't convince them with words, maybe I needed something more tangible. And that's when I started digging. Not into bank records. I'd been careful not to leave a trail, but into Madison's social media. Her emails, even her old posts. I wasn't looking to blackmail her. I was looking for patterns. Moments when she'd twisted the truth. Little inconsistencies in the image she worked so hard to polish. And I found them. Old GoFundMe campaigns she never followed through on. Commissions she took deposits for but never delivered. Friends she'd quietly ghosted after borrowing money. It was all there, hidden in plain sight. But still, I hesitated. What was I going to do? Screenshot it and send it to my mom? Print it out like a high school report and demand an apology? No, that wasn't me. And besides, I didn't want pity. I wanted something deeper. I wanted the choice to matter again. And then, just as I was drowning in these thoughts, life threw me a match. My phone buzzed late one night while I was brushing my teeth. I almost ignored it, assuming it was a work email or a shipping update. But when I looked down and saw her name, Madison, my stomach turned. Hey Sam, I really need to talk. It's important. Just like that, the script flipped. The golden girl was reaching out. The one who had painted herself as the generous daughter, the savior, was now texting me at midnight. Needing something. I didn't reply right away. I stared at the screen for a long time. Emotions flickering through me like static. Anger, curiosity, a flicker of amusement. She needed me. Now that was interesting. I locked my phone and walked back to bed. My heart strangely calm. Tomorrow, I thought. Let her wait. The next morning, I didn't check my phone until after my second cup of coffee. The message was still there. Still unread. And somehow, that made it sweeter. Hey Sam, I really need to talk. It's important. I tapped it open slowly. Like lifting the lid on a box I wasn't sure I was ready to look inside. She didn't explain. Didn't apologize. Just 4 words that screamed desperation. And still, I didn't reply. Not right away. I waited until late afternoon before I finally texted back. What's so important, Madison? Make it quick. The reply came almost instantly. Can I come over? Please, I'm in a tough spot. I really need your help. I read it twice. Then again. Help. The irony wasn't lost on me. After everything she'd taken, after every lie she'd wrapped herself in like silk, Madison was finally crawling out of that perfect cocoon. Wings tattered, asking me to pull her out. Part of me wanted to delete the message and block her number. But another part, the colder, quieter part, knew this was the moment I'd been waiting for. So I typed back. Fine. Tomorrow at 3. Don't be late. And I turned my phone off. That night, I didn't sleep much. I kept imagining how it would go. Would she cry? Would she lie again? Would she finally, admit the truth? By the time 3 o'clock rolled around the next day, I was ready for anything. Or at least, I thought I was. She showed up looking like a ghost of herself. Hair in a messy bun. Dark circles under her eyes. Sweatshirt 2 sizes too big. No makeup. No practiced smiles. Just Madison, raw and unraveling. She stepped inside, eyes darting around like she didn't recognize the space. I didn't know where else to go. She mumbled, settling on the edge of the couch. Hands wringing the sleeves of her hoodie. Things have been bad. I didn't sit down. I leaned against the wall and crossed my arms. Define bad. She blinked. Rent, credit cards, groceries, everything's falling apart. And you need money, I said, cutting her off. She flinched. Yeah. Silence. She waited for me to say something. Maybe offer a cup of tea. A seat. A little sisterly grace. But I gave her nothing. Instead, I asked, why me? Her eyes filled instantly. Because I've asked everyone else. I didn't want to involve mom and dad. And I knew I couldn't go to the family after. She didn't finish. Didn't have to. After what? After smearing me? After stealing my voice and replacing it with her own? I pushed off the wall and walked slowly toward her. You lied, Madison. You let them think you were someone you weren't. And you let me become someone I never was. Her shoulders tensed. I know. No, I said, sharper now. You don't know what it's like to walk into a room full of people who used to love you. Only to see pity and suspicion behind their smiles. She looked away. Do you know what that does to a person? To be erased by your own family? She nodded. Barely. I'm not giving you money. I said finally. She looked up. panic flashing in her eyes. Sam. No, I repeated. You want help? You'll get it, but not like this. No more handouts. No more lies. You want my help. You're going to have to own what you did. Tears welled in her eyes. I mean it, Madison, if you want a second chance. It starts with the truth. All of it, in front of everyone. She stared at me like I'd just told her to walk barefoot through fire. You want real help? I asked. Softer now. That's the price. And then came the twist. She nodded. I'll do it, she whispered. I'll tell them. I didn't believe her. Not really. But I said, Friday night, family dinner. You bring the truth. I'll bring the receipts. She didn't ask what receipts. She just sat there, silent and small, before finally getting up and walking out the door. And I stood in the doorway, watching her disappear down the sidewalk, wondering, for the first time, if maybe the storm was about to clear. Friday came faster than I expected. I pulled into my parents' driveway 10 minutes early, hands clammy on the steering wheel, stomach in knots. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about reclamation. My name, my place, my truth. Inside, the house smelled like pot roast and old memories. My parents were already seated. My grandparents too, even Aunt Linda, the one who thought I was just a jealous brat, was there. And then came Madison. She walked in like she had 100-pound weight strapped to her shoulders. Didn't greet anyone, just sat down, eyes red, mouth tight. And then, in front of everyone, she broke. Not theatrically, not with that usual Madison flair. But real, ugly, genuine. I lied, she choked out. The money wasn't from me. It was from Sam. Gasps, silence, a dropped fork. I took the credit because I wanted to feel important. She said, I wanted them to look at me the way they used to look at her. She looked at me then. Not to beg, not to ask for forgiveness, but to finally give something back. I'm sorry, she said, voice cracking. You didn't deserve what I did to you. And in that moment, I didn't feel victorious. I felt free. The silence after Madison's confession was louder than any scream. No one spoke, not right away. My mother sat frozen, one hand still resting on Madison's back like her brain hadn't caught up with her ears. My dad looked like someone had unplugged him from reality, mouth slightly open, eyes darting between us as if the pieces didn't quite fit. My grandmother covered her mouth, tears brimming, and I just sat there, perfectly still, watching the house I grew up in tilt on its axis. The moment I had imagined, prayed for, obsessed over, it was happening. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like watching someone rip the stitches out of a wound that had just begun to scar. Madison wept openly, hands trembling in her lap. I didn't mean to let it go that far, she said between sobs, but once everyone believed it, I didn't know how to undo it. I was scared, and I was selfish. She looked up at me with swollen eyes. I'm sorry, Sam, truly, I don't expect anything from you. I just needed you to hear it. For a second, I felt my throat tighten. Because she meant it. It wasn't a performance. There was no camera, no applause waiting in the wings. Just her, broken and honest in front of the people who once cheered her on. And yet, I couldn't just let go of everything. Not like that. My mother turned to me then, her face pale, mouth shaking as she tried to speak. Samantha, she whispered, I don't even know where to begin. You start, I said, by acknowledging that you didn't believe me. That hit her like a slap. We were wrong, she said immediately, so wrong. I see it now. I let the story be more important than the truth. My dad nodded, his voice hoarse. We should have trusted you. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I know saying that doesn't fix it. But I mean it. I nodded slowly, my voice calm but resolute. You didn't just doubt me. You dismissed me. You called me jealous. And then you watched me walk away, and said nothing. No one argued. No one defended themselves. There was nothing left to say. Just the echo of every moment they let me go. Piece by piece. Aunt Linda excused herself quietly, face burning. My grandfather, usually stoic, shook his head in disbelief. We owe you a hell of a lot more than an apology, he said, his voice low. And somehow, that meant more than anything. Still, I didn't cry, didn't collapse into hugs or offer comfort. I stood. I'm glad the truth is out. I said, meeting each of their eyes. But I can't undo what's been done. I can't unfeel what I've felt for the past 6 months. My mom reached out, but I stepped back. It's going to take time, I added, and space. And then I turned to Madison. You took something from me. Not just the credit, but my sense of safety, of place. And no matter how sorry you are, that damage is real. She nodded, quietly. I know, she whispered, and I'll live with that. It wasn't bitter. It wasn't cruel. It was just honest. And I think that's what made it finally feel real. I left the house with my head high that night. Not triumphant, not vindicated, just free. For the first time in months, I slept through the night without waking in a cold sweat. My chest didn't ache every time my phone buzzed. I stopped bracing for impact. The texts from my parents started small. Thinking of you. Dinner sometime soon? No pressure. We miss you. We understand if you need space. I didn't ignore them, but I didn't rush to reply either. They needed to learn what it felt like to wait in silence. To sit with uncertainty. To earn trust the way I'd been forced to fight for my own voice. And slowly, over the weeks that followed, something shifted. They stopped trying to fix it with empty words. Instead, they showed up differently. When we did speak, it wasn't about Madison. It was about me, how I was doing, what I needed, what I was ready for. They stopped talking and started listening. That was new. Madison, to her credit, didn't push her way back in. She texted once. Just once. Thank you for letting me say it out loud. I didn't reply, not because I hated her, but because forgiveness isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, distant, a slow burn that may never reach a full flame. Weeks turned into months, and eventually, I started to feel like myself again. A little bruised, a little wiser, but no longer invisible. And the ache? It didn't vanish. It sat with me sometimes when I passed the mailbox where I'd left the envelope. Or heard someone praise Madison's artwork in passing. But it didn't define me anymore. Because I'd found something far more important than their approval. I found my spine. And with it, my peace. Maybe one day I'll invite her back in. Maybe one day my parents will earn the closeness they lost. But for now, I'm okay. Because I know who I am. And I never needed applause to prove it.